Alright, so here is my 3D model that I've built on Blender. It was built by starting with a cube, and this cube I've manipulated the vectors and the planes to give a little robot right here with a little radio on its back. So if we put this robot into a scene by having a floor and a wall, and then we added a light, what we can say is that if the light is placed in front of it, it's going to create a projection onto this wall, and this is going to be its orthogonal projection. Now if we were to move this light and bring it a bit above, so like it's projected onto this projection plane, then we can say that this is going to be the parallel projection, because the light is going to affect these vectors and its projection is going to end up on the projection plane right here. Now, if we go on to the edit mode of this model and go into vertice, how Blender works is that it works with mainly vertices right here, these little dots. And these dots are points in a 3D world that contain an orientation, coordinates are in X, Y, and Z. Now, if you look at the placement of our object, you can recognize, let's first off get rid of this and this. We can see that it's placed in almost the 0, 0 area. So if we go into 2D view, and we go towards the 0 area, delete this, what we can say right here is that it has a vector that heads towards there, and also has a vector that goes towards there. And the conventional way is that this side right here is going to be plus in a graph, and this is going to be negative. So we can say that this is a negative vector, and this is going to be a positive vector. But it's all because of the reference point we've given, saying that this is going to be positive. So I could do it above here, and let's say, let's do a complete one. Let's say we have a vector on the arm right here going up. We've referenced this being the positive. So then if we say that this is another vector on its hand, we can say this is going to be a negative vector with a certain angle in a 3D world. So let's remove everything. If we focus on this arm right here again, what we can see, if I just get out of this mode, we can see that there's a 90 degrees here. So what we can determine right here is that this vector right here has its 2D normal vector being here. And the way to calculate this with math is to do the dot product between these two vectors. And if it gives 0, then it's going to give a orthogonal / perpendicular vector. Now, if we were to bring back the plane right here, what we can say is the first thing that comes in contact with the plane would be the boots. So let's focus on the boots. If I create a vector right here, which is one right here, by selecting these these edges right here, what I can say is that this vector heading up is going to be the 3D orthogonal vector of this plane, because it's going to be at 90 degrees from the plane, and it's going to be heading the outer direction. Now, if we focus a bit on the model itself, let's go towards its body right here. What we can talk here is that it's about the selection of these edges. So if we have an edge, vector like this, and another vector like this, and now we add them up, what we can say is that vector, let's say v plus vector w is going to give you a new vector, let's call it x. And if I draw x, how it's going to work is going to be this vector like this. There you go. We've added 2 vectors, and that's how it works. When you select something in Blender, it's going to be seeing it as vectors. When you select edges, to be specific, it's going to be seeing as adding vectors. So let's say I am going here, I'm selecting this vector and this vector. Well, it just added these 2 vectors. Now when I do a change on this vector, it's going to be, Blender's going to be okay, it's the addition of this vector on top and the vector on the bottom. Now, if you want to add more details to your model, you can also make it so that it has more intersections. And how you can do that in this case, for example, could be by subtracting vectors. So if I come back here and I draw this whole vector right here, and we can say that there is also another vector starting from here going onto the same direction that's going to be called v, and the whole vector is going to be called x. So what we can say is that the vector x minus the vector v, what it's going to give you is going to give you this whole selection minus this vector. But this vector, if we draw it, we can say that it's going up, but since what we're doing is minus v, this vector is going to be in the same magnitude but opposite direction. So now when we're going to doing all of this in Blender, we're going to be selecting these 2. What we start with right here is these 2 vectors minus this. What we have left is this simple vector, and when I do anything changed with it, that's how it's going to work. And that's how Blender does it when you want to get something more precise. It does a vector subtraction. So let's say here, it's going to subtract these 2 vectors to give you 2 smaller vectors. And the last thing I would like to mention is if we look at this hand, we can see that if we go into a 2D view, that the distance of the magnitude of this vector right here is going to be equals to 1, which means that when a magnitude is 1, it's a unit vector. Thank you very much.